Okay, Sunday morning kollel. Usually we take a halachic topic on the parsha. Today we will take somewhat of a halachic topic, somewhat of a historic topic. Not related to this parsha, but a couple days ago was the yard site of one of our favorite characters, Tzadikim, Reb Menachem Azaria of Panu, or Panu, and it was Daled of. And before then I was upstate New York in Tannersville for a couple days, and somebody there asked me about what's the deal with the controversy of Reb Menachem Azaria's beard. There's a fascinating controversy about his beard. So I thought, I should give a shiur about that. And we came back, and it was his yard site. It was a Thursday. It was Daled of, but it was right before Tisha B'Av, so Tisha B'Av kind of took the spotlight. But Reb Menachem Azaria never gets the back seat, so now's his turn. Today's his day. So I'm going to discuss his life, fascinating things, and also the very interesting controversy. It's very enlightening and very intriguing. It's a good piece of machlokes to know, good piece of controversy to know. We love Reb Menachem Azaria. Well, who was he? He's born in 1548. 1548. In Italy. Panu, or more correct, Panu, is a city on the east coast of Italy, not a big town. Apparently his family was from there. If he himself was born there is a debate, if he was born in Panu, or if he was born up north in Bologna. But he's born in 1548, and he spends his life in a couple cities. He spends a number of years of his youth in Venice. He definitely spent a number of years in Venice without question. But he's famous for and he was in a city called Ferrara and Reggio. These are all cities in Reggio. Thank you very much. Is it Reggio or Reggio? Reggio, yeah. And but ultimately is most connected to the city of Mantoba or Mantua. Different ways of pronouncing it. Mantua. So right, in Mantua. So right, so in Lashon Kodesh they usually spell it with a beis at the end. Mantua. All right, the same place, and that's where he's buried. His wife was from Mantua, and so his shver was actually a big rov there. So ultimately, he's most related to that city of Mantua, where he had a big yeshiva, and ultimately he passes away in the year 1620. 1620. So just over 70 years. So in those days, not bad. He was famous as a halachist. He was a big rav, but more famous as a Kabbalist. We only have a few sfarim of his in halacha. One of them we presented the other week, Alfasi Zuta, where he took the Rif's halachas on the whole Shas and condensed it into it's a one sefer, the small Alfasi, the small Alfas. The Rif was Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, came from Fez in Morocco. So this is the Alfasi Zuta, the small Alfas. And although he's condensing the Rif, he has lots of his own chidushim. We had it by the shiur of saying Kriya Shema without wearing tefillin. We saw a whole chiddush from him about that.
Did he ever come in contact with the Arizal?
Oh, we're going to talk about that. Don't steal the whole shiur from me, please. And he also has a sefer of tshuvas, response to the tshuvas of the Rameh, Reb Menachem Azaria of Panu. So and his words in halacha are worth their weight in gold. The great Achronim, the Magen Avraham, likes to, whenever someone quotes from him, this is like an awesome source, and his words are never to be trifled with. And that's in Nigla. How much more so in Kabbalah? Rabbi Yaakov Emden, who we know was quite a critic, to say a rationalist, and had no problem speaking his mind, has a letter in his She'ilas Yavitz, it's letter 33, where he just writes praises and praises about the Rameh of Panu. He calls him, he's the Melech b'chachmas HaKabbalah. He's the king of Kabbalah. Rabbi Yaakov Emner, who himself was a great Kabbalist, he states, he confers the title upon Menachem Azaria as the king of Kabbalah, the king. And he says no one knows Kabbalah, no one knows Lazoya like him. Every word that he says is perfect, It's mamish, line upon line. It's a whole paragraph of accolades, beautiful descriptions of how supernatural and how righteous, how perfect, how wonderful, and it's just incredible. You get a feeling of how he adored, Yaakov Emden adored Menachem Azaria of Panu. The Shalah, who was a contemporary of Menachem Azaria, the Shalah, couple years younger, the Shalah passes away in 1630, 10 years after Menachem Azaria. The Shalah has a letter where he writes to someone about learning the works of Menachem Azaria, and the Shalah says, it's sweet, it's perfect, and the Shalah says, it's ruba de ruba, almost everything is perfectly true. And if there happens to be one thing here or there which is not accurate, it's negligible. It's minimal, and it doesn't even just forget about it. So he says 99. But Rabbi Yaakov Emden, a couple generations later, says no, everything is perfect. He writes, Rabbi Yaakov Emden says, every single word of the man is perfect, and so the Shalah was a contemporary, so he says, but even the Shalah says, he's telling people to learn a contemporary sefer, and he's saying how it's 99% straight from heaven is a great thing. Right, but you see how Rabbi Yaakov Emden later says, every single word is perfect, so you always see that, as time goes by, we have greater respect. Anyways, so who taught Rabbi Menachem Azaria Nigla? He had a Rebbe called Rabbi Yishmael. His name was Yishmael. Chanina was his last name, but Rabbi Yishmael. And he quotes him, he says, my Rebbe, Rabbi Yishmael, was so sharp, a great scholar. We almost know nothing about him, but he was the teacher in Gemara for the Menachem Azaria. Who taught him Kabbalah? Because Kabbalah literally means tradition. You really have to receive it from someone. Who taught him? So first of all, he had an uncle whose name was Rabbi Ezra of Panu. So you have Rabbi Menachem Azaria. His uncle is Rabbi Ezra, and historians show that there was a lot of confusion over time about these names, because you have Rabbi Azaria of Panu and his uncle Rabbi Ezra, and they both lived in Manitoba. His uncle lived in Manitoba as well. But his uncle was, it's pretty clear today, his uncle was Rabbi Ezra of Manitoba, and who was a major Kabbalist, and our Rabbi Menachem Azaria went to learn by his uncle. Once he got steeped in the learning of Kabbalah, he found out that there's a major Kabbalist in Svas. His name was Reb Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak. This is in the end of the 1560s. Rabbi Menachem Azaria is about 20 years old. And he hears about the Ramak. I would say more importantly, the Ramak heard about him somehow from Tzvas. He hears that there's this teenager in Italy who has an open mind and understands everything and is delving into Kabbalah. The Ramak sent a copy of his great work, Pardes Rimonim, the orchard of pomegranates. He sent it as a gift to Rabbi Menachem Azaria. And Rabbi Menachem Azaria, he fell in love with the Ramak and the Ramak's Torah, and they had correspondence. And Rabbi Menachem Azaria writes, I don't have it on the paper, but he writes that I am a student of the Ramak through his books, through his works. I never saw him, because the Ramak passes away in 1570. Menachem Azaria is only 22. Didn't leave Italy. And his whole correspondence was maybe about 2 years. But he says, I was a student of his. He is my Rebbe. I never saw him, but through his books, through his works. And we said that he was such a chassid of his that Ramak wrote a sefer called Eilima. And Menachem Azaria named his daughter after that book, Eilima. He named his daughter after a work of the Ramak.
Not after a grandmother.
Right, after a Sefer. You know, you ever saw the little boy running around called Hayom Yom? No, so that's Tanya. Yeah. So, Reb Menachem Azaria at this point is considered a student of the Ramak. He writes about it himself. And then, now Reb Menachem Azaria comes from a very wealthy family. He was a very wealthy man. He had a big home. I saw in one place, I don't know if it's true, but they described that his home was a beautiful home, except for one room. One room was as simple as it would come. The room was full of manuscripts. What does that mean? Reb Menachem Azaria had his own printing press. We know that for a fact. Reb Menachem Azaria writes, he writes in one of his letters about printing a get through one of these machines. Without electricity, one of those hand printers. And he writes he says, I know the laws of the get, and I know exactly how the machine operates. I'm telling you it's kosher. Yeah, he writes that in a letter. He said, it's like the Rebbe once said about a microphone on Shabbos. The Rebbe said, you have some rabbis who know the laws of Shabbos, others know how a microphone works. I know both. Anyhow, so Menachem Azaria said mamish the same thing about getting this get on one of these hand printers. It's considered that the Sofer wrote it because it's not a button. Exactly. We spoke about by machine matzahs, the difference of if you do it through the hand or right. So these are good questions. But either way, those types of printers are not around anymore, so it's what?
It doesn't have to get the same kedusha.
Right, yeah, I don't want to question. No, but by matzah there was a whole word. It is lishma because you. Anyhow, I find these are good questions. I'm just bringing it in. So here's the thing: Reb Menachem Azaria was a wealthy man, and he had a printing press. People would send him manuscripts to print. Reb Yosef Kaira in Svas, also who's the Rebbe of the Ramak in Nigla, hears that there's a young man in Italy who will print. He sent him his Kesef Mishnah, which was Rabbi Yosef Kaira's huge work on the Rambam, commentary on the entire Rambam. He sent him the folios. He sent it all the way from Eretz Yisrael to Tzvas, and it was sitting in Menachem Azaria's. He used to call it the Golus room, apparently, the room of exile, which was where all the manuscripts were waiting to be printed. It was the only room in the house that was simple. It wasn't. The rest of the house was beautiful, Italian style, the Renaissance style. It was beautiful. This room was simple, but that's where he spent most of his time. This was his study. This was where he hung out. And his friends were all the manuscripts people sent. And he would go through these manuscripts. And he was a huge scholar, so he would maybe edit. Rabbi Yosef Kaira is probably not going to edit. Maybe for just but he would set the whole thing. And he probably has some people working there. But this was so Rabbi Yosef Kaira passes away in 1575. He sent it about a year or two before. Menachem Azaria is in his 20s. He was in his 20s when Rabbi Yosef Kaira entrusted him to print the Kesef Mishnah. So you see, Menachem Azaria is a young man living in Italy, but he was well known in the circles of scholars in Tzfas. Rabbi Menachem Azaria hears. I don't know how long it took till it was printed. It's a big work. I don't know how long it took. It was printed. There's episode records somewhere. Menachem Azaria writes how he was so troubled that it took so long to get Rabbi Yosef Kaira, because he had so much respect for Rabbi Yosef Kaira, and he just every day that it didn't happen, he felt guilty. Okay. One.
He printed Assur. It's a Rashi.
Don't know.
Look at the book.
Don't know. Yeah. Don't know.
Sale and auction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this Reb Menachem Azaria, when the Ramak passed away in the year 1570, Reb Menachem Azaria was 22 years old. He heard about it. He was devastated. The Ramak was young. The Ramak was only 48. The Ramak passed away young. The Arizal was even younger, 38. The Ramak was 48. And Reb Menachem Azaria was devastated. Who knows? Maybe he was planning a trip to go to Eretz Yisrael and visit his Rebbe. He was devastated. But he heard that the Ramak has many manuscripts sitting in Tzfas. So Menachem Azaria wants to get hold of those manuscripts. So we have an account in number 1. The number 1's actually been cut off on the page. But the page that has the early numbers, the 4 and the 5, that's page 1. On the top right-hand side, one line was cut off. This is from the Chidah in his Sefer Shem HaGdolim. He says there that Menachem Azaria was nicknamed Manuel. In Italy, someone who had the name Menachem was nicknamed by the Goyim Manuel. When he says the word Goyim, Koirin Loi Manuel. So he was called Manuel. So many Svarim you'll see Reb Manuel of Panu, it's really Reb Menachem Azaria. Says the Chidah. The Chasam, he quotes Reb Shloime Shlimel. B'Ksava, he wrote a letter. It's brought in the Sefer Mitzaref L'Chochma, and from the Rav Yashar of Candia. I'll tell you later who that was. But V'zel L'Shoinei. This is what Reb Shloime writes. The Chacham Kvoid Marena Rav Emanuel. That's our Rameh. Hizil, he sent off 1,000 gold coins, red gold coins, Mikisa from his own pocket, to the widow of Maharam Cordovera, to the widow of the Ramak, because she was holding on to all the manuscripts. Be'ad she'ish'il, in order that she should lend. He wasn't asking, he just wanted to borrow the manuscripts to print them. For the Sefer R Yisrael, Shechibur Harav Olav Shalom Pirish Hazoyer. The Ramak wrote a Sefer called R Yisrael on the Zoyer. Like somebody once got a copy for the Friedrich Rebbe. The Friedrich Rebbe wrote him, "Thank you so much for getting me the R Yisrael on the Zoyer." The Ramak's widow had the manuscripts. The Rameh wanted her to give up the manuscripts, at least till they're printed, then she'll get them back. The problem is, from Tzfaz to Italy, you think you're getting your manuscripts back. She wasn't so sure, so he had to give her an incentive. 1,000 coins. Milvad hoitzos hasoifrim v'hanyor. Now, also the expense, he was going to pay for the entire printing. In addition to the entire printing, he was paying her 1,000 gold coins just to entice her to hand over the manuscripts. Upoi Tzfas, here in Tzfas, it was told to me, besides for the 1,000 that he sent to the widow, he needed to get some rabbis to speak to her. So he sent 20 gold coins to Reb Yosef Kaira, 20 gold coins to Reb Shloime El Kabatz, and 10 gold coins to the Alshich, in order that all three of them should speak to the woman. She did not want to give up those manuscripts.
They were the best, you
There was listen, Tzvastem was an all-star. But imagine, how come the Rameh couldn't, how come he couldn't just ask them? No, he didn't. The Rameh never wanted to just ask people to do favors. He could have asked Rabbi Yosef Kaira to send, no. He wanted, the Rameh was the Rameh had the Rameh wanted, exactly.
This eventually
so,
giving him his way. Didn't the Rebbe always pay somebody if you're doing this?
Yeah. Right, so he paid, but look how much he paid. He paid 20 gold coins to Rabbi Yosef Kaira, 20 to the Shloime El Kabatz, and 10 to the Alshich. Now the Alshich and Shloime El Kabatz are the same age. Rabbi Yosef Kaira was the oldest of the group, so he was the senior scholar. Fine. Shloime El Kabatz and the Alshich are the same age. Why is Shloime getting 20?
Right.
Because Reb Shloime was a Rebbe of the Ramak in Kabbalah. They were also brothers-in-law. But Reb Shloime El Kabatz was a Rebbe of the Ramak in Kabbalah. So he was... Reb Shloime's words would have had much more of an effect on the widow because he was the Rebbe of her husband. And the Alshich was a... Right, so the Alshich was just a big guy in Tzfas. So maybe, I don't know. To say it could be that since Reb Shloime Chabatz's words would have had more of an effect because he knows the family, this was his student. Okay, but this is the story. So that's a very interesting detail. So the Chidah quotes us from a letter of Reb Shloime Shlimel. If you look on the left in number 2, the Chidah says, after a while I found the document between the Rameh and the widow. And he said, I'll tell you what the document actually says. Acher Zman, says the Chidah, Acher Zman Rav. I found a copy of the document of what the Rebbetzin of the Ramak wrote to Rabbi Menachem Azaria. The Gufa Ikri, you want the document itself, it's in Italy. You saw it's for auction. It's not for auction, it has to be for auction. Imagine having this, the original, it'll be Imagine how if I could show that at the shir. Imagine. Anyhow, the Chasam Sofer, Shahoidis Harabonis, that the Rebbetzin admits that from the 1,000, she got 250 from the Chacham Hanichbed, the Rameh, but she forgave the other 750. She said like this: V'nisratzis ba'ad ashar. She said for the Rameh offered 1,000. She didn't want the whole thing. She said, "I want some svarim." He was a library, right? He had a print house. She said instead, she wanted that. She had a son, I guess from the Ramak, but she had a son, Gedalia, to get 100 Mishnayos with 2 Pirushim, 50 Rambams with the Kesef Mishnah. The Kesef was already printed by then. And then the Rameh will be potter from the other 500. Now I'm not sure how 250 plus 5 gets 1,000. All right, I don't know. But he obligated himself, Shinis Chayev, he obligated himself for the copy. She said, you know what? Most of the money keep, in exchange, in lieu, 250 I'm going to take. But for the rest, I want a whole lot, 50 Rambams, 100 Mishnayos, which in those days was unheard of. And then this was the document. Signed on the document, he says, the Al-Sheikh signed. Then Reb Moshe, the son of Yisrael Dikuriel, who was one of the big Kabbalists in Tzfas, and Reb Yaakov Bey Rav, who was a grandson of the Smicha guy, who had the same name. No, the Smicha guy passed away by then, but this is the grandson. And the time of the shtar was Tishrei, 1584. 1584 is the year. Okay? So,
12 years after.
but he found the actual document. Very cute.
Exactly 500 years ago.
1584.
Right, 1584.
But not yet 2084. Not yet 2084. Don't push the time travel. Fine. So, at this point, he's a major chassid of the Ramak. You see from here, trying to get the manuscripts. You see. Look at number 4.
Who wrote number 2?
This is the Chidah. The Chidah. In number 4,
What sefer did he write?
the Chidah is writing this in his Shem Hagdolim, on the entry, which is it's a history work, kind of going through all the names of the scholars before him, the names of Sfarim. It's on the entry on the Sefer R Yisrael, which is that work of the Ramak. In number 4, the Chidah says like this: I saw in Sefer Chizyonis, the Book of Visions, Ksav Yad, it's a manuscript to R Chaim Vital, who actually I got a copy of the Sefer from our dear participant of this year, that R Chaim Vital once had a dream. Now Chaim Vital was originally a student of the Ramak when he was young, and then obviously became a student of the Arizal. R Chaim Vital once had a dream, and the Ramak, in the dream the Ramak spoke to him, and the Ramak said like this, that the Kabbalah of your teacher, the Arizal, is true and it's pnimius. And in Olam Haba, I'm also learning the Kabbalah of the Arizal. So the Ramak told Reb Chaim, because the Ramak passes away in 1570, then the Arizal is the chief Kabbalist in Tzfas for 2 years till he passes away. The Arizal and the Ramak barely overlapped. They barely met each other. Very short amount of time. So the Ramak told his student Reb Chaim Vital that in the world to come, you know what I'm learning? I'm the Kabbalah Arizal. So if the Ramak himself concedes that the Arizal is the ultimate Kabbalah, did Menachem Azaria ever get that memo? Because he's hooked on to the Kabbalah of the Ramak. Did he ever get that memo? The answer is yes. Because the Arizal is true, he was only in Tzfas for about 2 years till he passed away at the age of 38. There was a plague. He got ill and he went to bed and he passed away. And the Arizal, his chief student was Reb Chaim Vital. He had some other students. One was known by the name of R Yisrael Sarug, who we have spoken about in the past. This R Yisrael Sarug was by the Arizal, and he traveled around Poland, Italy, Croatia, lots of that area, teaching to the world the Kabbalah of the Arizal. Reb Chaim Vital was in Tzfas and then Damascus, and that was it. But R Yisrael Sarug traveled everywhere. He went to Poland, he taught the Marshal, the Kabbalah of the Arizal. We said he had a student called Avram Di Harera, who was the first proponent of Tzimtzum not being literal. We had that whole shir. And He also came to Italy. R Yisrael Sarug came to Italy. And he went to the yeshiva of the Rameh Panu. And he told the Rameh Panu, you're living in the past. You're busy with the Ramak. The Ramak was great, but you got to wake up. You got to hear about Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. And he taught the Rameh, maybe whatever he knew from the Arizal, but a huge amount. And the Rameh actually writes in number 5, the Rameh Panu writes in one of his forums, this is the Kabbalah of the Arizal from my teacher R Yisrael Sarug, Natrachmona Parke, may God protect him, who was one of the greatest students of the Arizal, who Shezikani Lahar Begufei Torah, who merited I merited to hear from him much Torah from the Arizal. So here the Rameh attests to the fact that Yisrael Sarug came to Italy and he taught me the Kabbalah of the Arizal. The reason this is so significant is for the following reason. In number 6, I have a letter over here from Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner. Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner was a big scholar in America. The end of his life in Eretz Yisrael, passed away, what was it, 1980, around there. He was close with the Rebbe at a time, and then there was other things, but fine, whatever.
We lived together.
Yeah, when they in Berlin, years before, and fine, let's leave it at that. But the following occurred. In 1970, this Rav Hutner, who's known as the Pachad Yitzchak from his farm, he was a great scholar, and he loved the works of the Maharal. He was, steeped in the works of the Maharal, and you'll see why it's significant. In 1970, he was traveling between Eretz Yisrael and America, and there was a hijacking. He, his wife, his daughter, I think son-in-law, and they were taken captive, and the women and children were let out in Cyprus, but he was taken to Jordan, and he was held there for a bit, and didn't know what was going to happen. That Shabbos, 1970, the Rebbe verbrengt. It was during Elul, it was Chai Elul, which is also the day of the Maharal, besides the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, it's also the Maharal. And the Rebbe spoke that the Maharal was Melumid Benisim, miracles abounded around the Maharal. And the Rebbe said, for someone that kochs in the Maharal's Torah, he needs the Maharal's schus to stand in his stead. If the Maharal was surrounded by miracles, and someone who kochs in his Torah should benefit from those miracles as well. And he was speaking about Rav Hutner. And shortly after, Rav Hutner was released, and boom, he was back in New York for Rosh Hashanah. So this Rav, I don't know. There was some, I don't know. He writes the following letter, okay? Join me in number 6. This is a famous letter that he wrote when they printed the Alfasi Zuta from the Rameh a couple decades ago. So he wrote a letter, and the letter was printed in the introduction. It says like this. This is Rav Hutner writing this 60 years ago. Yudua hi azharasei hachamur shal Arizal. Everyone knows that Arizal warned. Bidvar samchusei habilodes shal R Chaim Vital. The Arizal said only R Chaim Vital should record his teachings. R Chaim Vital tells this to us, but we're going to trust him, that the Arizal told him nobody else is authorized to record the teachings. And that one should not analyze in the writings of the other students that wrote from the Arizal. That's on one side. Avo, but says Rav Hutner, me'idach gisa, from the other side, it's well known that harbe dvarim, many things which are not found in R Chaim Vital's writings, and the only sources in the writings of R Yisrael Sarug, musmachim hei mi beis midrasha shel Agra. The Vilna Gaon put his stamp on all the teachings of R Yisrael Sarug. Now the teachings of R Yisrael Sarug we got through the Rameh Panu. And the Vilna Gaon put his stamp on it. And the question is, I thought that Arizal said R Chaim Vital is the only student that's authorized to record the teachings. Right? That's the shiloh that he has. The Chol Sisrei Olam, there's many secret worlds from the secrets of Malbush. There's a world called the Olam HaMalbush. Not to get into that, but it's quoted in Chassidus, but it's only from Yisrael Sarug. and the idea of Tihiru Ilah, and it's mentioned in Nefesh HaChaim from R Chaim Vital, the student of the Vilna Gaon. There's no source in R Chaim Vital, only from the words of R Yisrael Sarug. Ubavada, it's a tema gedola. This must be a wonder. Didn't the Vilna Gaon care that the Arizal said only R Chaim Vital is authorized? Ubafrat, that we find this warning in R Chaim Volozhina's writings. R Chaim Volozhina, who is the cardinal student of the Vilna Gaon and a big Kabbalist as well, makes reference to the fact that only R Chaim Vital was authorized by the Arizal. And yet you have R Chaim Volozhina and the Vilna Gaon quoting R Yisrael Sarug.
The Panu is not a student.
No, but he's getting from R Yisrael Sarug.
Where did Yisrael Sarug get it
From the Arizal.
No.
He was a student.
Panu, you said.
No, Rameh Panu got from Yisrael. Yisrael Sarug came to Italy and taught Rameh Panu the teachings of the Arizal. So he says like this. So how could you say that in the base Medrash of the Vilna Gaon they didn't care about the Arizal's warning? Ella. Look at the word Ella. Shalakushta demilsa. You know what the truth is? Mizbaletas bekan. It's clear here the truth of the words of the great Kohen of Lublin. That's Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, who wrote a sefer called Sefer Zichronos. Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin has the following theory. When the Arizal the Arizal was in Mitzrayim for most of his life. He starts to have dreams. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, or someone as a messenger, Shimon Bar Yochai comes to him in a dream and says, "You got to go to Tzfas. Reb Chaim Vital's there. He needs you to teach him Kabbalah." The Arizal came to Tzfas. Reb Chaim Vital wasn't there. He was in Damascus. For 6 months, the Arizal starts haunting Reb Chaim Vital in his dreams. You got to come till he finally comes. During those 6 months, Reb Yisrael Sarug learned from the Arizal. And then he left. He didn't overlap with Reb Chaim Vital. Let's read this. Ki kol Kabbalah, says Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, the entire Kabbalah of Reb Yisrael Sarug from the mouth of the Arizal, it took place before Reb Chaim Vital came. And therefore, when the Arizal told Chaim Vital, "I don't want anyone else to quote me but you," there were things he taught Rabbi Yisrael Sarug he never repeated to Rabbi Chaim Vital. He wasn't B'chlal part of that decree. Being Rabbi Yisrael Sarug went straight to Italy. You know what Reb Tzadok HaKohen says? Rabbi Chaim Vital was B'chlal unaware of some of the things that Arizal taught Rabbi Yisrael Sarug. Now I know that there's a great Kabbalist called Reb Meir Poppers, who was earlier, and he says that Reb Chaim Vital knew it all, but there were things he felt were too holy to reveal. And those were the things Reb Yisrael Sarug, took it on the shoulder to reveal. Reb Tzadok HaKohen wants to suggest that maybe Reb Chaim Vital was B'chal unaware. And therefore Reb Chaim Vital didn't put it in his writings, like he put things from his friends. From here you see that the Arizal's warning about not looking in the other books is not talking about Yisrael Sarug, because he wrote things that B'chal weren't even repeated later. That's what the Kohen of Lublin says. So says Rav Hutner, there's no question that it must be the Vilna Gaon felt the same way. The Arizal's warning that Reb Chaim Vital is the only one authorized, that's a fact, must be accepted. But it's only talking about the things that were discussed while Reb Chaim Vital was there to hear it, that he's the only one that should record it. The stuff that was discussed before, the rule doesn't apply. So Rav Hutner says, all the words of Yisrael Sarug that he heard from the Arizal, we only know from the Rameh Panu. So that's why he's so important in the chain of Kabbalah. So he said that Rameh Panu lives on till he passes away in the year 1620. How did he pass away? Look in number 7. This is from one of the introductions to one of his books. According to what's known, the Rameh Zal at a special time hisbaided to be on his own and unify with his God, to awaken the love for God, but he had a condition with his mishamish that after a certain amount of time you better come in and make sure I'm still breathing. In order that he Pasha shouldn't die with klois hanefesh. One day there was a fire in the city. In Mantua there was a fire. And because of the whole Bahala, because of the ruckus, his attendant couldn't make it in time. He walks into the room that Ahmed passed away. Yeah, that's how he passed away, during davening. And the Rameh was bound with one bind with the world to come, and that's how so he died with Klois HaNefesh. Incredible. So now that you know this, look at the following. Look, join me on the next page, number 8. This is from the Sefer Be'er Eisek. I'm sorry for the old print. It's like Mamish going back in time. His name was Reb Shabsi Be'er. Reb Shabsi Be'er we know very little about, almost zilch, except for the fact he passed away in 1673. He was in Eretz Yisrael. I think he might have spent, he was some time in Italy. Apparently he passed away while he was traveling from Eretz Yisrael to collect funds. He was on a shlichus and he passed away. He wrote a sefer in halacha called Be'er Eisek. Be'er Eisek. And in it he writes in number 8, it's a letter about beards, and he says like this. Ano I nafshi darashti v'chakarti heitev hadek. He says, I investigated that the Rameh Panu, I know al-noch, and I know for a fact, every Friday, have a chayif reishe, he would shampoo his hair because he was bald, and he would trim his beard. Every Friday, he says, look in the second line of number 8, umistaper bedikne, the second line of number 8 in the middle, mistaper bedikne, he would cut his beard, kaminig, like the custom of Italy. Don't you know what happened in Italy? This is the Renaissance. You grew up in Italy, you learned sciences, you learned other languages, you were very well groomed, well versed, well read. You lived amongst the people. And he says, who ate fatty flesh on a golden plate from the Arizal's Kabbalah besides him? In other words, the greatest Kabbalist was Rameh Panu. And nonetheless, you see, it's hard to read, but he says he learned the Torah of the Arizal from R Yisrael Sarug, second to last line. Asher ba'al midrash, R Yisrael came to the base medrash of the Rameh, mitam ha'ari rabbi. Here he says that the Arizal sent R Yisrael Sarug to go to Italy. That's something that I don't know. I don't know if there's any other source. We'll trust him that the Arizal sent R Yisrael. So I want you to travel. Amongst your travels, go to Italy, and I don't know, and go teach my teachings to the Rameh. The Kach Noah got Sof Yom, the Rameh did it his whole life, every Friday, his beard, and all of his students after him as well. Kimoiri, because my teacher, the last line of number 8, the Be'er Eisek says my teacher was the Rabbi Chasnoi, the son-in-law, and the grandchild, and the student of his. Now, I don't know, this guy's name was Rabbi Yitzchak, who was the son-in-law of the Rameh. He was his son-in-law and his grandson. I don't know exactly what that means, but he says, so too Harav Bal Maiver Yabik. The Maiver Yabik was the greatest student of the Rameh. Says the Be'er Eisek, he also, in Italy, they all cut their beards, and that was normal. That's what the hold on.
Be the same person because if the grandson he married his aunt. What do you mean? Why not?
I don't know. I don't know exactly.
Marries his father or mother's sister. To be his son-in-law.
Yeah. The daughter. Oh. So this is what the Be'er Eisek says. So according, in others, we just built up this incredible image of the Rameh Panu, and comes the Be'er Eisek and says something you wouldn't expect, that the greatest Kabbalist every Friday. But he's not the only one that said it. Look in number 9. It's a letter of the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer is living in Hungary, in Pressburg. The Chasam Sofer. He's born in 1762. So he's well after the Be'er Eisek, well after. And he says like this. The Chasam Sofer writes, Umasher Romaz, you in your letter, he tells the guy, you wrote that according to the Kabbalists, they say you shouldn't touch, loy lohoy, don't touch your beard at all. Says the Chasam Sofer, ainly Eisek ben issur. So I don't know what you're talking. You're quoting Kabbalah. I'm not a Kabbalist, says the Chasam Sofer. But he says, Fakert, I'll prove you the opposite. Mehem, you're quoting Kabbalists, the Kabbalists Fakert, they do take off their beard. He says, look at the next line. B'chol eretz, in the whole Italy, kol chachamel megoloche zachin. Says the Chasam Sofer, you're quoting me Kabbalah? In Italy, every Makubal didn't have a beard. That was life in Italy. V'nitalim, and they hang themselves on the great tree, Menachem Azaria, the author of Assur Mamoris, the father of the Kabbalists. So the Rabbi Yankov Emden says he was the king. The Chasam Sofer is the father of the Kabbalists. That he was Megaleach, Mibli Hishu Saira Echos. Says the Chasam Sofer, he was so good, there wasn't, sometimes people say, they miss his part. He didn't miss anything. He didn't leave one hair. Now, said the Chasam Sofer, how do I know this? The Chain Heyedolov HaYashar Mikandaya. Who is the Yashar of Candia? Just to tell you for a second. His name was Yosef Shloime Roifer, the doctor. Rosh Tevis Yashar. Candia is today known as Heraklion. It's a city on the island of Crete, in the Mediterranean. Crete. So in the north part of the island, there's a city called Heraklion, or used to be called Candia. And he came from there. A lot of Yiddish history there. He actually went to Italy, to Padua, and he started astronomy under Galileo. He was one of the prime students of Galileo in astronomy, the Yashar. He travels around, he ends up dying in Prague. But the Yashar of Candia was an incredible person. The Chidah quotes him all the time. And the Chasam Sofer says, the Yashar of Candia is my source in his Sefer Elim. That the Yashar of Candia is the one who says that Amen never had a beard. Now, are we going to trust the Yashar of Candia? Let me tell you a story about him. Just look at number 10, an unbelievable story. I mentioned a couple years ago. In the days of the Yashar, 500 students got together. Muflage ter 5. This is in a sefer. I forgot the name of the sefer. Stories that collects of the Yashar of Rabbi Yosef Shloime Roifer. His last name was Del Medigo, the doctor Roifer. In his days, niskabtsu 500 students, Muflage the greatest. And they started learning philosophy. They learned Mer Nevuchim, and they all went fry. Excuse me, but that's just what happened. Actually, it happened many times. Hope the Rambam will forgive me. But Ad Shenispakru, they all became kafir. The kaf, they denied God, and they said that the world is not a creation. The world always existed, and Hashem is not mashkiach on the world. They didn't deny the existence of God, but they did not believe. They didn't have the belief that the average Jew has today. And all the students got together and they came to the tzaddik Rabbi Yosef of Candia that you have to agree with us. And they roped him into an argument to convince him that he has to agree with them. Now the tzaddik heard what they said. He almost fell through the ground. He was taken with terror. So they start bringing all their proofs and to debate with him. He couldn't answer them. I guess they weren't ready to hear a response.
1762.
No. That was the Chasam Sofer. The Yashar of Candia, I can give you his years. You want his years? He was born in 1591, passed away 1655.
So this is
earlier.
1600s.
He actually could have met the Rameh. I don't have any. He would have been in Italy then, but I don't have any record that he did. Vayan vayomer lehem, says the Yashar of Candia, you got to give me some time. I'll get back to you. So they gave him some time, and they left. In the meantime, the Yashar, he sent letters to many great rabbonim. They have to come quick. You got to come quick. And then a major meeting. He told them what happened. And they all davened and they fasted night and day. There was a big fast. The rabbis fasted. And the Yashar as well fell on his face for 3 days and 3 nights. He didn't eat, didn't drink for 3 days. It sounds like for 3 days he was pushed on the floor. After 3 days he picked himself up. And he said, Eis lasis lashem, for the sake of God I have to annul Torah. See what that means? He took a pen and he wrote without stopping. Again, he didn't eat, he didn't drink, he didn't learn, didn't daven. Everything was put on hold. He has 500 of the best bochrim going off the deep end. He doesn't go to shul, he's gone. They say when the Rebbe Shab's Ayin Beis came out, they said about a few chassidim, they locked themselves up in rooms and for 3 days didn't come out. Anyhow, so over here as well. He just wrote and wrote. And he wrote his work called Sefer Elim, which is available. Afterwards, the students came, and he said, you know what? Take the book. I've answered everything in the book. And with the book, he brought all of them back. You know why? Because in the Sefer, he discusses all types of wisdoms. They saw how wise he was, and yet he was a real believer. It struck a chord in their heart. All of them did tshuva, they became tzaddikim gemurim. Wow. The 500 Bachrim came back, okay? So this guy was a serious scholar, the Yashar of Candia.
Is needed today.
And he was an expert astronomer. I said he was one of the greatest students of Galileo. A very colorful personality. And he says that Panu didn't have a beard. It's very possible he saw, because he was born in 1591. Rameh passes away 1620. Yashar would have been 30 almost. And he was already draying zich in Italy then. He probably would have come, if the Rameh is in Italy, not too far. Panu was not that far from Mantova, he would have gone. What?
The other guy was in the 1600s. Later.
Yeah, the Be'er Eisek was a student of the son-in-law of the Rameh, like he says in the last line of number 8. Wow. So the Be'er Eisek never saw it. He's saying what he heard from somebody else. So the Yashar maybe saw it, but here's the problem though. Here's the problem. The Menachem Elazar, the great Menachem Elazar, who was a Munkatcher Rebbe before the Holocaust, passed away in 1936, I think. So the Menachem Elazar, that's one of the name of his one of his farm on Halacha. The Rebbe was a big fan of his, and the Menachem Elazar has a letter about this, and he says, I look through the whole Sefer Elim. The Yashar does not write anything about the beard, that it never happened. Says the Menachem Elazar in the introduction to Sefer Elim, a student of the Yashar writes about how great the Yashar was. And the student says that the Yashar didn't have a beard. That's what it says there. And the Menachem Elazar says, yeah, it makes sense, because the Yashar was in government circles. Makes sense, like they say about the Rambam, if the picture is correct, that the Rambam wouldn't have had payas. The Rambam writes that if you're in government circles, you take off your payas, right? There's an Inyan. Which Bechal people, it's taken also further that, Bechal, if you're amongst dignitaries, if, for whatever, okay, maybe even for business reasons as well, fine. But, so the Menachem Elazar says, I think the Chasam Sofer remembered that he saw something in Sefer Elim about the Yashar, and he mixed it up. But says the Menachem Elazar, the Yashar never said that Ameh didn't have a beard. If the Yashar said it, he probably saw it. But he never said it. So the only proof we have is Be'er Eisek number 8. He didn't see it. He said what he heard from somebody else. And we'll see why that's a problem. But 37. Yeah, but hold on the Hebrew?
No, the English.
What day of the year? Because sometimes they get the years wrong. No, for sure. No. By the way, on Wikipedia, many times the years are lots of contradictions.
That he never had a beard, that he didn't grow one. I mean,
we're going to see. Did you ever see the picture? You ever saw? What? Google that Panu right now. You'll see a painting of him. Tell me if he has a beard. You'll see. Yeah, if that's him. That is the official painting of the Panu. Yeah, online. It looks like a trimmed beard, but there's a beard. Hold on, wait. First of all, yeah. Is that for sure him? We don't know. Okay. Hold on. Let's go. Continues the Chasam Sofer number 9. Let's just continue. In number 9, go to the 6th line. It starts with V'hoya. V'hoya oimers. The Chasam Sofer says that the Rameh Panu used to say, you know why I don't have a beard? Al pi chachmei hamukubalim, based on Kabbalah, chutz la'aretz should not have a beard. The Chasam Sofer quotes the idea, if you're out of Israel, no beard. Where is that from? The Rameh never said that. The Yashar never said that. It's in number 8. The Be'er Eisek is the one who actually says that. I didn't have it on the page. I thought this would be hard enough. The Be'er Eisek in number 8, Reb Shabsi Be'er in the 1600s, he says that, you know why the Rameh and Bechal in Italy they didn't have? Because al pi Kabbalah, outside Israel, no beard. Because outside Israel there's negative energy, and they could get stuck to your beard. You don't want to have a beard outside Israel. That's what he says. And the Chasam Sofer quotes it, no problem. Now again, according to the Minchas Halacha, the Chasam Sofer is a little bit of misquoting, because this is really from the Be'er Eisek, and the Chasam Sofer seems to be quoting it from the Yashar of Candia. Fine. Uma arich b'masha ein liyad, says the Chasam Sofer, this is really not my field, Kabbalah, so I'm not even going to talk about this. But he says like this, but our fathers in Hungary, many of them didn't have beards. Says the Chasam Sofer, al sad ha'hechrich hagod. He said, look, you have to read this. This is unbelievable. He says, you want to know where it started not to have a beard? I'll tell you where it started. It's not a makar mashchas. You see, the person that wrote to the Chasam Sofer said, it's because we want to follow the goyim. Said the Chasam Sofer, let me set the record straight. It was b'kedusha yisera. Not having a beard was because of holiness. Why? It started in the year 1096 by the First Crusade. Year Tatnu. That's 1096 of the Common Era, First Crusade. That the Haroyim, the leaders and they allowed everyone to change their look and to cut their beards so the Goyim wouldn't recognize. During the Crusades, every Yid's life was in peril, so the rabbi said, get rid of the beard. Your life's in danger. Now, but why were the Goyim shaven? You'll never believe it. Ki Oz, at that point, the Goyim also shaved, based on a story that happened in Poland. You ever heard the story? Said the Chasam Sofer, in Poland there was a king who was a Saurus. He couldn't grow his own beard. K'mavura b'siv, like it's in the history books. So you can imagine, if the king can't have a beard, no one can have a beard. So that's how all the Goyim started shaving. 3,000 years ago, every Goy had a beard. So now, at this point, it became fashion amongst the Goyim not to have. V'hitiru Chazal, the rabbis in Rashi's times, in the times of the First Crusade, said, for safety, you can do away with the beard, you can get rid of the beard. And now, that what happened was that those Yidden that did it, when they came home, they were embarrassed from all the other Yidden that did have beards. So the meaning became that no one had a beard. In order not to shame those that had to shave to save their life. That's what I think you're saying. Isn't that incredible? In order not to shame those that did it to save, everyone did it. And he's... Okay. Well, when in Shadi Zayin though? When? Cheshvan! Okay, Sivan May 37. All right, okay. Anyhow, he says, only the Mufloge Torah that sat at home, they had it. Fine. And he says those that left, I guess, Germany before 1096 and moved to other parts of Europe, they didn't go through that whole history, they kept their beards. Anyhow, he says like this, he finishes off by saying that if the original shaving came because we wanted to follow the Goyim, how could you follow the Goyim? But I explained that's not what happened. The original was to save people's lives, and therefore there's no problem at all, even today. Afilu reach issur ein bo. Said the Chasam Sofer, there's no problem at all. And he says in Italy, even the Kabbalists didn't have, and they all based themselves on the Rameh Panu. It's a well-known letter of the Chasam Sofer, and is fully no problem at all. So, hold on. Just very quickly, just a couple minutes just of the halacha behind it, and you'll see why there's this, and then at the end some more juicy stuff, okay?
No beer means no beer at all, or trim beer is all no beer?
Either or. Yeah, he does say that, I know. Yeah.
My shver was sent by the Friedrich Rebbe to Italy.
But it's overnight.
And it was so hard for him to walk with a beard in Italy because everybody looked
exactly, yeah.
Eyes,
Covered abrius. Many poskim say if it's embarrassing, some poskim discuss what if the beard grows in a funny way. Someone punked his beard grows. If it's embarrassing, you could take it off. But I just want to explain just very bekitza, just to get a bit of the background, and then we'll get to some more juicy stuff. It all starts in a Masechta Makkos daf Chaf Aleph. Look, join me number 11. The Mishnah says, "Eina chayiv, you're not chayiv for shaving, ad sheyitlenu b'tar, unless it's a shaver." We're going to do this quickly. Tana Rabbanan, the Gemara says like this. There are two psukim in the Chumash, right? Two psukim in the Chumash about it. One of them is in Parshas Kedoshim, one in Parshas Emor. In Emor, about the Kohanim, it says, Pa'as zekonam lo yegalechu. They should not be megalech, which we're going to translate as shaving, the corner of their beard. Now, I want to tell you something. The Gemara, it says clearly that really the beard, there's only 5 parts to the beard. The rest, no problem, you can get rid of. What exactly are the 5 parts is a debate. There's 2 on the right, 2 on the left, and 1 in the middle. The shals is it the higher jawbone, the lower jawbone, exactly, there's a shiloh where the 5 parts are. But the pasuk says they shouldn't be megaleach. But a galach, a Christian galach was called galach because they were shaven. You know, to contrast between the rav and the galach, the rabbi and the priest. Yachol, so the Gemara says, the Brisa says, based on that pasuk, you would think even if you took it off with scissors, you should be chayiv. If you can't cut it at all, then even scissors. So Talmud learned, that's why I have another pasuk in Kedoshim which says loy sashchis. Sashchis means to destroy, which means you have to go all the way to the skin itself. And scissors, a blade. Scissors doesn't cut that. Scissors doesn't cut that short. But if you just had the pasuk loy sashchis, then what if loktoi b'malakat v'ritun? And if you pluck it as well, if you took tweezers and pluck it, should be a problem. So Talmud loymer loy galecha. That's why I have the other pasuk. Meaning like this: if it just said loy galecha, don't cut, then even scissors. Loy sashchis means it has to go all the way to the skin. So just say that. No, but then if you pluck it with tweezers as well. So I need both psukim to teach me haketzad giluach sheyesh bayashchasa. You have to cut in a way that destroys. Plucking is not a regular way of cutting. It's not. That's not called giluach. It's like plucking. It has to be cutting with a cutting, but hashchos has to go all the way to the skin. Have only a razor. That's what the Gemara says. Comes the Rambam in number 12. The Rambam says, "Eina chayiv, you're not chayiv for the beard, ad shegalchenu b'tar, unless you shave it all the way with the shaver. That means, and you go all the way to the skin. As it says, v'loy sashchis es pasuk enecha, which means giluach, you have to cut sheyesh bayashchas. You have to have both details. It has to be cutting, which is not plucking, and it has to go all the way to the skin, which is a razor. Lefichach, if you did it with scissors, it's potter. When the Rambam says potter, what exactly does he mean? Potter means there's no punishment. But does it mean it's allowed? Major debate. Rabbi Yosef Kaira famously holds it's perfectly permitted. Rabbi Yosef Kaira famously holds that according to the Rambam, scissors, even if the scissors are as close to the skin as you want, no problem. In fact, in number 13 is Rabbi Yosef Kaira writing this on the tour, and he says in number 13, the Beis Yosef, even though the Rambam says about a beard, you're not chayiv unless you megalech with a shaver. Hold on, yeah, no. But by scissors you're not chayiv, which you might think means it's only that you're not chayiv a punishment, but it's still prohibited. He says no. The Rambam's only using the expression of the Mishnah, but it's lav davka. The Rambam's not being particular. The lechatchila nami shori. The Rambam would say lechatchila, as long as it's not a shaver all the way to the skin, you can do it any other way. You can get rid of the beard any other way, because he says by payas. The Rambam holds The Rambam holds with scissors you're allowed to cut off the payas completely. The Rambam holds with scissors. Now the Rosh there, I'll tell you, disagrees. The Rosh holds by the payas. The Rosh holds the payas is more severe than the beard. The Rosh holds the payas if you cut them completely and they're gone. With scissors, you violate the biblical command. The Rambam holds with scissors by the payas, no problem. So says Rabbi Yosef Kaira, so too by the beard, it's not any worse than the payas. He says the Rambam holds, if you have scissors, you can go as close as you want. It's mutar l'chatchila, no problem. And in number 14, he writes in Shulchan Aruch, this is Rabbi Yosef Kaira in Shulchan Aruch, you're not chayiv on the beard unless you have a razor. Avo b'misparim, but if it's with scissors, mutar, it's mutar. Even if it's like a razor. What does it mean, scissors like a razor? If the scissors go all the way to the skin that you can't even tell what the guy used, it's fine. Rabbi Yosef Kaira says mutar. So he's a big gun. So Rabbi Yosef Kaira is the source for this, right? And so l'chayr, it sounds pretty clear that, for the Ramemi Panu to do whatever he did, halachically should be fine. The shayla is Kabbalistically, well, that's what the Chasam Sofer told this guy. You're telling me Kabbalistically you need? Fakert, apparently Kabbalistically outside Israel you don't need, So Kabbalah. In halach it seems to be okay. I will tell you, look at number 15. This is where it gets a bit complicated, as you should know. The Sefer HaChinuch, Reb Aaron Halevi, of Barcelona. So he is just after the Rambam, and he quotes the Rambam that b'misparayim with siddur your potter. Nira midvar says he thinks the Rambam means like this: dafka your potter from a punishment, but it's still forbidden to do. Says the Sefer HaChinuch, he thinks according to the Rambam, if you use scissors you're potter, but it's still a problem. But he says it could be the Rambam is talking about if you use scissors like a razor all the way to the skin. Which means even according to the Sefer HaChinuch, stam taking scissors and cutting wouldn't be an issue either. He says he thinks the Rambam would hold it's Assur, maybe rabbinically, if you cut all the way to the skin, which we call scissors like a razor. But Rabbi Yosef Kaira disagrees. So almost all poskim said you can't quote the Sefer HaChinuch in Halacha. I mean, Rabbi Yosef Kaira gave a psak. The Sefer HaChinuch is a philosophy sefer. He has a, but the Tzemach Tzedek has a famous. Oh, it's such a long letter about beards. Oh my, long, difficult letter. But in it, he makes a big point about the Tzemach Tzedek wants to. He throws Rabbi Yosef Kaira here out the window. He doesn't. But upon him, in almost all halachas farm today, poskim they'll all tell you Rabbi Yosef Kaira. That's what we follow. So it would seem that halachically, for the Ramemi Panu not to have a beard, what's the big deal? Rabbi Yosef Kaira said it's okay. The Sha'ad is Kabbalistically. Well, I don't know. This Be'er Eisek says, out of Israel, you don't need to have a beard. So join me, look at number 16. This is a comment of Reb Shloime Eger, Rabbi Kiva Eger's son. Reb Shloime Eger, on his commentary to Shulchan Aruch, on the words of Rabbi Yosef Kaira that if you use scissors it's mutter, says Reb Shloime Eger, you want to know Kabbalistically? Look in the letter of Be'er Eisek, Siman 70, which we have in number 8, who distinguishes between if you live in Israel or out of Israel. And whether you learn an entire day or not. And he testifies from many great Kabbalah students of the Arizal that they shave with scissors. So what we saw in number 8 is quoted in Halacha by Reb Shloime Eger. Reb Shloime Eger was one of the greatest Torah geniuses 200 years, 150, 180 years ago. He was a big misnagid, and nonetheless, he was one of the greatest Torah scholars of his time. His son, Reb Leibel, became a Chassidic Rebbe in one of the big ironies of history. Reb Shloime Eger is quoting the letter from the Be'er Eisek telling you that the Shulchan Aruch says halachically it's okay. You want to know Kabbalistically? There's an idea outside Israel is okay. And also depends, if you learn a whole day, then you could have a beard. If you don't, you should. Many Litvishers say, right, who has a beard? If you're a big Rav or Shiv, you have a beard. But for the regular Bachar, it's not respect. Who do you think you are to walk around with the regular? You know, these days, a regular Bachar, who do you think you are, right? It's not respectful. So that idea comes from the Be'er Eisek in number 8, who wrote this 400 years ago, that there is an idea, at least out of Israel, the more someone's involved in learning, the more protected he is to be able to have a beard, that negative forces won't latch on. If someone works, then they can't afford to have a beard. That's what the Be'er Eisek says. And Reb Shloime Eger takes it seriously. And he also takes the testimony that the Arizal students in Italy didn't have beard, takes it seriously. Till we come to the last page, and here, this is very interesting.
What about on all
it gets really juicy here.
Of shaving, in other words, not using a knife, not using scissors, but
liquid, yeah. That's discussed as well. According to the Rambam, according to Rabbi Yosef Kaira, no problem at all. I will tell you what the Tzemach Tzedek, the main part of his 20-page letter is, there's something else in Torah called a man can't do the activities of a woman. Lo yulbash gever simla sisha. No, plucking
it to the White House.
Plucking out. Listen, the Yonasan ben Uziel says a woman can't walk around with ammunition. That's a woman wearing manskla. Imagine a woman being. The Rambam holds we had a shir. A woman can't even be a mashgiach. Sorry, that's what the Moshe Feinstein. That means a woman can't have any position of leadership. Now you want to run the whole world? Anyhow. No, just tell me
About chemicals.
Oh.
No, but Tzemach
No,
Tzedek.
about
The tzemach, like plucking white hairs from black hairs to make yourself look young is a women activity, right? That's fine, right? Women get younger every day, and that's perfectly fine. That's normal. They're encouraged to do that. You should know, Bechlal, the Gemara speaks about certain things that the rabbis pushed in order that the woman should be attractive to her husband. And, the minig of in many Jewish circles that the wife shaves her head, the Rebbe was not for that at all, and he would quote these Gemaras that it's not the way to go. It's not the way to go. Not to take away from other minhagim of many Chassidic groups, but I'm just saying the Rebbe's opinion was based on these Gemaras, not to do that. So the Tzemach Tzedek's real thing is that getting rid of the beard or even shortening it might encroach into that issue, and that's his main, which is a separate issue of what we're talking about over here. But that's what he goes on and on and on and on. Fine, but we can't look at this. Does he? Uh-huh. Rabbi Yosef Irgaz is the last fellow we have today. We've mentioned him in the past. Who was he? He lives in Italy. He's born in. I have to get the years off my chest, so excuse me if they're meaningless or not. He's born in 1685, passes away in 1730. He's 45 years old when he passes away. He was a rabbi in Livorno in Italy. And he was a major Kabbalist. When we had the shir about the Tzimtzum, he was the main guy that pushed Tzimtzum is not literal, arguing on his cousin, the Mishnah's Chassidim, who felt that the Tzimtzum is literal. And we had that whole shir not too long ago. Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, he wrote the Shomer Emunim, which is it's like an introduction to Kabbalah. It's a very easy read relatively to other works of Kabbalah. Beautifully written. It's a dialogue between two people. Sha'altiel is the guy who has all the questions, Shoyel, and Yehoyada is the guy who has the information, always gives the answers. And Rabbi Yosef Irgaz was fanatical against Shabsai Tzvinix. We mentioned about Menachem Yechiyun that Rabbi Yosef Irgaz has an incredible letter in his Tshuvas called Divrei Yosef. And by the way, when the Chassidic movement was spreading like wildfire, in the early days, there was a point where many Litvish Yidden got together and made a ban of people learning Kabbalah. It was really as the aftermath of Shabsai Tzvinix. The average Tom and Harry can't just learn Kabbalah, and who knows what the outcome might be. And they banned works of Kabbalah to the average person. I don't remember where this ban took place, but one of the works that were not under the ban was the Shomer Emunim. It was considered safe Kabbalah from Yosef Irgaz. But he was a big Rav, and he fielded halachic questions from everywhere. Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, one of the greatest Italian Kabbalists. This Rabbi Yosef Irgaz has a letter. Someone asked him about beards, and asked him particularly about the thing we saw in number 8. This whole Be'er Eisek, that you only need a beard in Israel, and that the Rameh didn't have a beard, and that outside Israel it's dangerous to have a beard, and blah, 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 blah. So I took here 5 snippets. This was printed over 300 years ago, so sorry for the old print, but I'll read it with you. It's very interesting. In number 17 is the first one. It says Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, this is my letter. Anyone who the question we're dealing with in this letter about having beards is based on Kabbalah. Not according to regular halacha, because according to regular halacha it's fine. You want to know if Kabbalistically there needs to be a beard, so therefore I'm going to answer you Kabbalistically as well. And in the number 17, you see about halfway down there's a dot by the word Elyon. He says, Hein kedemai diacha. Let me first tell you, when the Kabbalists say you shouldn't shave even with scissors, they're not arguing on the Gemara, which allowed it based on their tradition. You can't say that the Kabbalah is arguing on the Gemara. Everyone agrees, and he says a whopper here. If Yankel Beryl walks in here and says that if you shave your beard with the scissor, you violate the prohibition, this guy is a heretic, you throw him out of shul. If somebody walks in and says that with the scissors you violate, he's a kaifer and teresh shabapeh. He's opening up the Bible and paskening. There's an oral law, and the Gemara says it's okay. And he says the Mekubalim didn't disagree. The Mekubalim hold that halachically it's okay. But there's another level of Pnimius. Right. Join me in number 18 on the left. Says Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, Va'oid ani chakarti al zeh. This tradition that the Ramemi Panu had no beard, he said, I was very intrigued when I heard about it. The Be'er Eisek never saw it. The Be'er Eisek says, I heard from my teacher, who was either a son-in-law or a grandson, we don't know how that worked. The whole thing is epis suspect. Okay, the Be'er Eisek was a big rav, but he himself says he never saw it. It's, he heard from someone. Says Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, I asked my teacher, Moreinu Rav Binyamin HaKoyen, who was in the city of Reggio. Rabbi Binyamin HaKoyen was called the Marbach, Rabbi Binyamin Koyen, who was the greatest student of the great Kabbalist, the Ramaz, Rabbi Moshe Zakuta. The Ramaz was by the Rabbeim, the Ramaz was Holy of Holies. The Ramaz was born in Portugal, to a family from Aranos of Portugal. He was born in the Netherlands, in Holland. But he makes his way ultimately to Italy and became a major, major Kabbalist. And Rabbi Moshe Zakuta's main student was this fellow, Binyamin HaKoyen. And Rabbi Yosef Irgaz is a student of him. Okay, so that's as far as the small chain, you have the Ramaz, his student Binyamin HaKoyen, and his student Rabbi Yosef who's talking. He says, I asked my Rebbe, what's the deal with the beard of the Ramemi Panu? Did he never have a beard? Is the Be'er Eisek's testimony true? He told me, the words of the Be'er Eisek, ein roy lismech aleim. Don't trust the word the Be'er Eisek says. Ki kvar his asku imoy baalei hayra. The word Eisek can also mean to tackle. Many rabbis have tackled him over some of his psakim. Do you know that he paskined, if you don't have any other wine, you could use stam yenom, which means wine from a guy that the chachamim prohibit, because if it was poured to idol worship, the Torah prohibits it. But if it's stam, you can't use it. But the Be'er Eisek calls, if you have no other wine, you could use such wine for Kiddush. And he got major flack for that. So says Rabbi Binyamin HaKoyen, Kamet shuvas shebo sham deloike hilchasim. Says Binyamin HaKoyen, you saw in Be'er Eisek, don't take his word for it. And says Binyamin HaKoyen, I saw in Mantova a picture of the Rameh, Zaken Mali al G'daysov, and it's for a beard on all sides. Now that picture we have seems to be only the bottom, not on the side. Binyamin So says Rabbi Yosef, Zuak Choshe Begufa Shaledus. This is a contradiction to the whole testimony of the Be'er Eisek. So he says, I heard from my Rebbe, who saw a painting with a beard. See, maybe it was right before. It's like the old man going through security at the airport, the long white beard, and his thing beeps, and they say, well, do you happen to have a shaver? Saying, well, right after this, he went, this was Friday morning. It sounded from the Be'er Eisek every Friday afternoon. So how do you explain that? Look at number 19. Oid Kosav, that the Be'er Eisek says that he was doirish and choiker, the custom of the Rameh, and he knows for a fact that Hava Mistaper Bedikne used to cut his beard like the minig in Italy. So says Rabbi Yosef, wait a second. Midika Amar Hava Mistaper Bedikne. Look at the words. Mistaper means to cut, Bedikne means in his beard. That means it was a little trim. Mistaper Bedikne doesn't mean cut the whole thing off. It doesn't say Mistaper Dikne. The bays makes a big difference. Mistaper Dikne means the beard was cut. Bedikne means in his beard. Muchach, that's clear that the testimony was that the Rameh was not that he cut off the whole beard, Elo Miktsas a little bit. The problem is the Be'er Eisek is trying to prove from here that out of Israel you can't have any beard at all. And his proof is that the Rameh used to trim a bit of the beard. The Be'er is trying to prove out of Eretz Yisrael where there's so much impurity, it's going to latch onto your beard, you got to get rid of it. And his proof is that the Rameh used to cut some of his beard. That proves nothing. That means because he still had most of it. So he says the whole tshuva of the Be'er Eisek doesn't klep. So klep sich nicht. It contradicts his words. Above that he says in Eretz Yisrael, get rid of it completely. Look at number 20. Oid tiyua kochazina, but I see another problem in his words. Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, paragraph to have a paragraph, is tearing apart this Be'er Eisek. He says it's better out of Israel to cut. And then 5 lines later, he says, if you want to be machmir and have a beard, tavil of bracha. For Rabbi Yosef, if it's dangerous to have a beard, what do you mean it's better to have it? How could the Be'er Eisek say, out of Israel, better not because it's dangerous because of the tumah? But if somebody wants to be machmir and have it, he's a holy man. Fakert, you shouldn't. Va'astiru mevu'eres.
Panu wouldn't be machmir.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In number 20, halfway through, the steer is clear. My chumrah, what type of chumrah? What do you mean tavil of bracha if he's doing something which is no good for him? Al karchachlam, you must say, Hu asma yirgish b'chulshas chilukai. It must be that the Be'er Eisek himself knew that his distinction of Israel out of Israel was weak. Ki ein le'amalis mech, he has no source for that. The Be'er Eisek is the one who created the idea you don't need a beard outside Israel. The Chasam Sofer in the letter in number 9 seemed to quote that either from the Rameh Panu direct or from the Yashar of Candia. The truth is, no, it was created by the Be'er Eisek, by the Shabsi Be'er. It was his idea to explain the fact that he heard that Ahmed didn't have a beard. It was his idea. Rabbi Yosef said it's rubbish. I didn't put the whole letter on, but he says, he says, fakert, if out of Eretz Yisrael there's more tumah, you esh need a beard to protect yourself. In one of his paragraphs, Rabbi Yosef says, fakert, in Eretz Yisrael where there's no tumah, maybe you don't need the beard for protection. Dafka out of Israel you need. He spins the whole thing in its head. Because he says this whole idea was fabricated from this Reb Shabsi Be'er. But the Chasam Sofer quotes it in number 9 as if it comes from the Ramen, from the Yashar of Candia. I will tell you that there was a rabbi called Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger. Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger. A couple generations ago. His father was a student of the Chasam Sofer. I'll tell you why it's important. His father learned by the Chasam Sofer. And when he was born, this Rabbi Akiva Yosef was born right when Rabbi Akiva Eiger passed away. Rabbi Akiva Eiger is the father-in-law of the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer was at the bris because it was his student. And the Chasam Sofer told the father, you should name your son after Rabbi Akiva Eiger. And this boy grew up to be Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger. So he was named after Rabbi Akiva Eiger. His father was a dear student of the Chasam Sofer. And he himself, when he got older, he learned under the Chasam Sofer's son, the Ksav Sofer. Why is that important? He testifies that in the Chasam Sofer later in life, he backtracked from his whole letter in number 9.
Makes sense.
He backtracked from the whole thing.
Was based on that.
Right, he backtracked from the whole thing. So you would assume why. The Chasam Sofer later realized that everything he quoted is all based on the Be'er Eisek, and Rabbi Yosef Irgaz threw the whole thing out the window, so then the discussion's over.
And that book that was
And Yashar Candia didn't write it, right? And there's no source. In other words, there's no source. So that's just very interesting. The Chasam Sofer, okay? But go back now finally number 21. Says Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, I'm not done with this letter of the Be'er Eisek. V'oid, in addition, Bishleime, if you would tell me that the Rameh got up and said, Al pi Kabbalah, you should get rid of your beard outside Israel, then I would hear what you're saying. If people would come and testify, they heard from the Rameh's holy mouth, out of Israel, get rid of your beard, then va'ani yisi meshivai, then you know what I would say? He quotes that in Chumash, there's an idea of whatever, that Rabbeinu Tam of Orleans said, and the Mizrahi said, I don't believe it. I would say, I don't believe, finished. If you would say that you heard from the Rameh Panu, you don't need a beard outside Israel, I would say, I don't think he said it. I don't believe he said it. But in truth, what is your testimony? The Be'er Eisek heard from somebody who saw the Rameh do something. Not that the Rameh said anything. Even if the Rameh was seen cutting his beard, who knows? Maybe he was sick. The Rameh didn't get up and say anything explicit, didn't give that person instruction. Even if the testimony is true, maybe the guy seeing made a mistake. Maybe he was looking in the mirror and he saw that Rameh holding scissors to his beard and he was really cutting his payas. People see things all the time, right? How often are we convinced we saw something And then you look back at a video of it, and it's actually not what you remember. We often have a distorted memory. He said, or maybe maybe the Rameh wasn't well for a couple of weeks, and therefore who knows, maybe he had some skin or something issue.
Right.
So even if the testimony is true, it's worthless because Rameh didn't say anything. You saw him do something. That is not credible evidence. You don't know why he did it. You don't know if the person saw exactly. The only evidence would be if you tell me that the Rameh said clearly you don't. That would be evidence. And I would refute it by saying, I don't believe it happened. But then we would have a discussion. Here there's no discussion. You saw him doing something. Are you sure you know what you saw? Do you know why he did it? And based on that, the Be'etzah you want to say you don't need a beard outside Israel? The whole thing is, forget about suspect, the whole thing is dismissed. So Rabbi Yosef Irgaz throws this out the window. What's very interesting is going back to I told you Rabbi Shloime Eger, who's well after Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, quotes the Ber Eisek's letter as fact. So what we're left is like this, just to wrap everything up. Halachically, Rabbi Yosef Kaira's opinion is, if you use scissors, you can go as close to the skin as you want. It's perfectly mutter. So let's assume that that's the general path of the halachists. The problem is, Kabbalistically, you hear so much about the Rameh. You would assume such a makubal like that, because the Arizal tells us, Al Pi Kabbalah, how important it is. The Zohar, Kabbalistically, the Zohar speaks about the beard, the rachmim of the Eibush that comes down in the beard. The Arizal talks about it. You would assume that Rameh Panu, knowing all his background, he must have had a beard. And then you have the Be'er Eisek, the Chasam Sofer, him quoting from the Yashar of Candia that he didn't have. And the Chasam Sofer in the Tshuva of number 9 is so clear that there's nothing wrong, and there's no problem, it's perfectly fine. People today still quote this letter of the Chasam Sofer, despite what I told you from Reb Schlesinger, the Chasam Sofer at the end of his life backtracked. The fact is,
fake news.
Exactly, the fact is, well, how does he heard from somebody, how does he know what he heard?
Yeah.
You have the Chasam Sofer's letter. You have to have strong evidence that the Chasam Sofer actually backtracked. Because Reb Schlesinger didn't hear it from the Chasam Sofer, he heard from somebody who heard. Maybe you don't know exactly, right? Whenever there could be broken telephone. So many quote the Chasam Sofer as saying, Kabbalistically, look at the Be'er Eisek, Chasam Sofer, Faket, outside Israel, no beard, it's dangerous to have a beard. And then you have Rabbi Yosef Irgaz, who piece by piece takes apart the Ber Eisek's letter very interestingly. But you have Rabbi Shloime Eger quoting the Ber Eisek. And ultimately I mentioned you have the Minchas Elazar, the Munkacher, who writes that the testimony the Chasam Sofer quotes from the Yashar never happened. It wasn't the Yashar talking about the Rameh, it was the Yashar student talking about him. Taka maybe didn't have, although we have a picture of the Yashar of Candia, he had a little beard in the front. But he was in government circles, so there you have different heterim completely. And the Minchas Elazar is very upset at the Chasam Sofer for going with this tradition that the Rameh didn't have a beard. How could you... But the fact is, listen, whether the Rameh did or didn't, we're going to assume that he did because Rabbi Yosef Irgaz said, my Rebbe told me he saw the painting, he has a full beard. So we're going to accept that. The Chasam Sofer does say that all the rabbis in Italy were Megulachim and they based it on the Rameh, but that must be a fact, that all the rabbis didn't have beards. The Chasam Sofer can't have erred in that fact. He says in Italy it was nobody had. Apparently they say the Ramchal, who was at the end of the great Italian Kabbalists, apparently also didn't have. There's a shmu about that. And some say that's part of the reason why Chassidim in general are not so fond of the Ramchal, in contrast to the Litvishes, because he didn't have a beard. But I would tell you, come on, if the great Kabbalah, if that was the minig in Italy, then you can't hold it against someone. I'll tell you this. In Australia, where I come from,
It wasn't invented then.
there... After the Holocaust, a number of Lubavitchers moved to Australia. A number of families. I think they wrote to the Friedrich Rebbe and they got a bracha to come to Australia. A number of families moved to Australia, and today they have grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Big families, pillars of the community. And when they came there in the early days, so they needed a shoichet. And the shoichet there didn't have a regular Chassidish beard. And they felt that, we love the guy and everything, but for Schritte, you want someone. So they wrote to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe wrote back, it depends where the guy comes from. This guy happened to come from German background. So the Rebbe says, if that's his background, so this for him is normal Judaism. There's nothing wrong, and you could eat a shchita. It doesn't signify anything. This is his background. So based on that, I would say so too. If the Chasam Sofer testifies that every rabbi, Kol Chachamei in Italy had no beard. By the Chasam Sofer says that the Rameh Panu didn't leave even one hair. Remember that? Yes. Where did you get that from? No. The Be'er Eisek just said he would mistaper bediknei. The Chasam Sofer didn't leave one beard. Where did he get that from? Where did he pick up that from? And especially how that definitely doesn't fit with the reality of this painting. Didn't leave one hair, can't be. But the Chasam Sofer does say that all the rabbis were Megulachim. So that was the minig in Italy. So if the Ramchal's own Rebbes and their Rebbes didn't have, it doesn't make sense to say that we would hold it against him. He didn't have a beard. That wouldn't be the reason. And more about the Ramchal and Chassidus another time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.